Hey there, Wild One. Welcome back. If you're new here, I'm so glad you landed in this space. If someone sent you this episode, they probably see something stirring in you. I hope you'll stick around. And if you've been walking with me for a while, thank you. Your presence is the soil that this community grows from. Wildly Intentional is made in the quiet hours, before sunrise or after bedtime, with heart, hope, and a big mug of coffee by my side. If it resonates and you want to help offset the cost of production, you can support the show at buymeacoffee.com/wildlyintentional. Every bit helps me keep the mic on and the mission moving. Details are in the show notes. This one starts with a garden and leads to a yurt and a birth and a deeper way of being alive. Today, we're heading into the known with someone whose work has literally and spiritually transformed the landscape of my life. Laura Weber is the founder of Environmental SOULutions. Now, funny coincidence before we dive in. Laura Weber and I almost share a last name. I'm a double B Weber and she's a single B Weber. And no, we're not related, just cosmically aligned, and definitely not to be confused with anyone in my extended family. A classically trained scholar and spiritual director, a real estate guide, and a nature therapist, Laura brings deep roots and wide wings to every conversation. Laura helped us design our Soulscape, a grounded, nature-led vision for our homestead that somehow paved the way for one of the most powerful experiences of my life, giving birth to my baby in a yurt. But that's a story for another episode. Today's episode, we're going to follow the winding path from landscape design to environmental soul work, from home buying to healing, from nature's wisdom to belonging. We explore what it means to be home in your body, your land, and your calling. This one's for the rooted seekers that are longing for rhythms that feel like home, and for the restless reformers caring too much in a world that's moving too fast. If you've ever craved deeper connection with the land, your purpose, or the sacred work of change, Laura's voice will feel like a homecoming. Whether you're navigating a life transition, dreaming of wilder places, or simply longing for reconnection, this episode is for you. Let's begin. Reclaim your rhythm. Rethink the rules. Rewrite your life. This is Wildly Intentional, the show where we question the scripts we've inherited and build a life, family, and legacy on purpose. If you're done living on autopilot, come with a curious mind and a courageous heart. Here, we talk about what it means to question, unlearn, create, and build what truly matters. I'm your host, Mandy, maverick mom of 3, maker, family culture builder, lifelong question asker, and the friend people call when they're ready to rethink, well, everything. I'm here to shake the norms, tell the truth, and light the way forward. All right, Laura. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. I am just so thrilled that we were finally able to make this happen.
Yeah, thank you for having me today.
Yes, and I look back at how you and I crossed paths initially, Laura, and it was at the Backyard Abundance event when I bought a Soulscape package. And I'll be honest, when I did that, I didn't even really know what the heck I was buying, but I was so intrigued and just curious, like, what did that mean? What would that tell me about my property? And as you now know, there's a lot more to it than even we knew at the time we were rocking around doing said Soulscape. But would you just talk about a Soulscape, Laura? And like, what does that mean? And what did that process look like that you did for Tom and I for that?
Sure. So, Soulscapes were born out of a long, over 3 decades career working with people who are on a spiritual journey and who understand that spiritual journey to be embedded in their relationship with nature. So I wanted to help people to connect in very specific ways, which we do with a kind of a spirituality of place, right? The water speaks to us, the mountains speak to us, the desert, the the forest speak to us. Our creature can speak to us in very specific, personal, visceral ways. And so I recognized along the way that people who were separated or who perceived themselves as being separated from the places that nourish their souls were in basically spiritual deserts. And so I wanted to help them to design spaces that connect their spiritual journey with what they love best about creation, knowing that if we connect with creation regularly, that we'll protect and revere it. And so I started helping people create soulscapes that were significant to them many years ago in the Midwest, because people, not being near an ocean, not being near mountains, or conversely needing prairie, needing the wild of the North Woods, needing ways to commune with our Midwestern creature kin. I wanted to help people at home to experience daily what their soul longs for, say when they go on vacation, or if they get a diagnosis that says, I don't have long to live. Where do I want to live? How do I want to live? And so creating these spaces for me became a way of helping people on their spiritual journey. And while I was an administrator at Prairie Woods, I helped a lot of people to create these soulscapes at home, outside and inside. And then I met you guys, of course, through Backyard Abundance, and we did your Yurt soulscape, which I think in my world, in my imaginative world of Sacred Life of Walter Mitty, became something like the Four Winds story dawns or something like that, because I wanted to kind of capture what you guys wanted in a space that would feed your soul, and that's where you guys came in.
Yeah. So would you mind talking about just like the first consult at Eureka Moon Farm and just like what your impressions were of the property, or like what stood out to you about our space and the vision for the yurt?
Yeah. What stood out to me about this space was the people in it. There was great spiritual gravitas there. I know that there was some, concern there about what spiritual presence might be there. And we walked the land to get a feel for that presence. But also just meeting you and Tom and the kids is so delightful, and recognizing that you were a family that was already grounded in nature and wanted a sacred space that you could be a family with, various interests, growing points, hopes for your life, and to celebrate your gifts. And so we designed the space to reflect you. And it's the beauty of your family that really called that into being. The round part of it was really because it mimics the shape of yours, right? And easy transition for the two hemispheres of the brain, which is very important for neuropsychology, for spiritual grounding, is to have an eye that beautifully sweeps across an area. And then also to have discrete places in the yurt so that you could, practice Reiki and yoga, and that Tom would have a place for maybe some meditation. The kids would have a place to incubate seeds for what's growing, what's coming, and then to tell stories, and that this would be a place where the family really came together as a unit and felt that their spirit of togetherness was alive in that place. So that's what we did.
It was awesome. Do you want to talk about what you designed? Because I remember you telling me, and this is actually something that stuck with me to start the podcast, is you would wake up in ancestral heritage and then go down to the fire and talk about your dreams with your elders. And it was you saying that really made me be like, that's what podcasting is oral storytelling, right? And just having these conversations. And these are things that my kids will be able to listen to someday to hear about their mom and what she was doing, right? And so that I loved, but there were so many pieces of the yurt vision that you had that while we didn't, it took on an evolution of its own, which I'll talk to. But if you want to talk about the vision that you designed, because it was so beautiful. And I think we haven't totally abandoned it. We just have paused it here for right now.
Yeah. So one of the things that I work with people on a spiritual journey is, kind of the interior landscape, right? Interior awareness, and dream work is a big part of it. A lot of people, think that we're going to sleep. That's not real. We just it's just a part of the way to cleanse the body, or to free the body to rest. It is. Many indigenous cultures and many native spiritual traditions revere the process of dream weaving and what that calls forth from us. And so the story I think that I might have told you and Tom when we were thinking about this, and that inspired me when I was thinking about your sacred space, was an indigenous culture that celebrates the elder presence at the opening of a yurt, or at the opening of a tent. As the sun rises, the elder stokes the fire, and the young people come from their resting places, and they start with the youngest. As the sun is rising, the youngest tells the dreams that she or he or they had. And then their siblings, and then their parents, and then finally the grandparents, maybe the great-grandparents, the elders are the last ones. And as the sun is rising, the meaning dawns on them. And it becomes the fodder for how they approach the day, what is rising in their awareness during the day, what they want to cultivate, what they want to put to rest, and how it is that galvanizes the community to be able to have those dreams come to life. So I think when we were designing that space, I wanted to make sure that you all had that deep familiarity with your own dreamscapes and your own ways of kind of imagining and co-creating. Hey, this is going to be a great day. How's this going to come together? And as a family, we discover this as the day progresses.
Yeah. I thought that was awesome because we ended up buying a yurt that had 2 entrances. And we didn't place it where you and I discussed, like when you were here. But like I said, it kind of evolved, right? It was actually the yurt where I gave birth to our baby here at home. And it was absolutely beautiful. So I think you planted a major seed with us in doing that. And what's funny is the yurt was kind of our idea. We were just kind of we kind of want to do this, but we want to make it more intentional, and we want help and guidance on where it should go and what it should include. And that's where you had things like the stove and the fire to implement that fire element. And you had, I can't remember what your idea was for the water.
Yeah, I think we wanted to do a water wall, or a sheet of water to kind of blanket that there's nothing more comforting than warm water, right? There's nothing more comforting. But I think you guys incorporated it in a different way.
We had a birth pool, and then I had a plant wall and set up there. So I had the earth and the water. And while we didn't have the fire, Tom really helped set the space and lit candles and the whole, when I was first in contractions and everything, he went in there and he really set the space up and lit the candles and started the music and opened all the windows. And it just felt so amazing and awesome. And I loved that little yurt tent that we put up. We had our family sleep out in it for the first day of summer solstice. We did school out there a lot. The kids would go relax down there. I'd be this is a sacred space. This is a space that I am protecting. This is a calm space, a very intentional space. You have the rest of the farm to be wild and crazy on. But when you come in here, your shoes are off. You're going to keep it calm. And if you have sillies or crazies that you need to get out, you need to leave the tent, And so they really respected that. And I think they loved it. If I couldn't find them on the farm, it's they were in there taking a nap or curled up reading books. And it was just, I think everyone really sank into that and felt it. It was incredible.
Yeah, I love that, Mandy. You're talking about, sinking into it, that kind of grounding where you just feel yourself embedded in creation is the safest, most gentle holding that we can experience in our lives. If we do that, if we practice that while we're living, then when we sink into that space in our dying, we already feel at home.
Yeah. And I feel our baby felt how calm that was. Like, because the birth went amazing. And then even just his whole being here, like he did his initial cry, I think, to tell us, like, I'm okay. And then he just like wide-eyed looked at us for like 4 hours. And we were just like, I've never seen a baby so calm. Like, this is just amazing. And it just felt like he was like, what's up, guys? Like,
Yeah.
I made it. And here we are just looking at each other. And it was just super special, and it just also felt awesome that we didn't have to rush and go anywhere or do anything. And we could just really be present and enjoy that moment. And I think that the intentionality behind creating that space and just all the work that I had done for myself mentally and physically and just like confidently really helped us just have an amazing experience with it. I'm so grateful for you helping us cast that vision and plant that seed, because it has impacted our family in a huge way.
Ah, that's great. That's a great story. It is really, really wonderful to hear.
It's because of you. So thank you. You came here, you walked the land with us, and then you went back and you had a lot of fun dreaming up what you were going to present. And when you came and presented to us, we realized that you and Tom had this real estate connection. Do you want to talk about how you went from director of a spiritual center in Iowa to getting your real estate license and moving to Missouri, and how and what do real estate and Soulscapes, how are you marrying those two worlds right now?
That's funny. Well, the real estate actually is part of my overall vision. My vocation right now is my business, Environmental SOULutions, and it's SOULutions, SOUL, Environmental SOULutions.
I love that.
And but that was birthed quite serendipitously in the context of the derecho that hit the corridor in Iowa in 2020 in August. If you remember, that wasn't a good year for us, right? We had the global pandemic that was happening. And then in our beautiful bioregion, over 90,000 square miles of gorgeous, gorgeous canopy-laden Midwestern beauty was decimated by 145-mile-an-hour sustained winds that uprooted 200- and 300-year-old arbor elders and really compromised an entire bioregion. And in that experience, I was a director of an eco-spirituality center and had been working with spiritual leaders, civic leaders, all kinds of community people whose homes were completely devastated. My home was devastated. It took 2 years to get to get it back together again. Our infrastructure was destroyed. And in the context of that, I initiated a 2-year recovery program, an environmental trauma recovery program called Treasuring Our Trees. And it started with ritual, requiem for the trees, gathering a community together on Zoom because it was the time of the pandemic, and thousands of people coming to weep for what we had lost, our kin. And for some people, knowing for the first time why this is such a significant loss, and to be able to go through this process together as a community. This first part was followed up by an educational piece that lasted 2 weeks, again on Zoom because of the pandemic. We called experts in, environmental experts from all over to talk about not just arboreal kin, right, our trees, but to talk about soil and air and water and all the creatures who rely on healthy trees and a mycelial network to keep everything thriving. And after our educational period, we went into the equitable replanting. So Environmental SOULutions was born in this context. And because I have a background and training in philosophical ethics and theology, spirituality, of course, environmental justice became my real focus. And so I founded that business. And then I have kids from many, many years of teaching in higher ed who kept asking me about equitable rehoming for a planet that is being decimated consistently through climate change. And what happens is that they're raising kids and they want to be in homes that are sustainable, homes that are good for the planet. And it's hard right now, right? And we have this incredible disparity of the ultra rich and people who are not able to afford homes. And in many cases, because of climate change, are not able to insure homes. And so they wanted me to help them. And so I did what a mom does, is I got a real estate license so that I could walk with people in a crucial, financial and vocational place where, those two intersect is when they're homing and when they're rehoming. And so to be able to do that, I'm able to offer realtor services to people, which has been a blast and a heartache in some ways, realizing, what has happened because of redlining and blockbusting. Moved back to Missouri, where I'm from, and St. Louis is my hometown, and it's an awful legacy that we have here. But recognizing that I can be a force for good in that homing is all about spirituality, and that's where those two intersect. And for me, walking with someone all the way home is a great, tender, and privileged place. It's entering a sacred place for them. And so I do that as part of the services I offer, but I offer a lot of other services, environmental justice consulting, for example, and ESG consulting. And, I do equity frameworks for, nature-based solution equity frameworks. I do a lot of nature-based solutions planning and training, and being able to help people who are concerned about creation and how to live healthfully in creation.
That's awesome, Laura. So you've really hinted at, you're at the intersection of land meets the environment meets soul. So with those three things considered, because I feel like you're thinking about this very deeply compared to your average Joe, it's just ooh, I like this house, I'm going to buy it, right? You're really deeply thinking through the land and the home and the people. So tell me, what does home mean to you?
Well, that's a great question. I think home means where the energy of love resides. And when you know that a person feels truly at home, it's because they're loved, and they know that love carries them, makes a safe place for them. And it's all about relationship. Now, there are some people who, live alone. If they are in communion with the earth, with all that exists, then they're not alone. And I want to walk with people to a home that feels like the lap of love. And being able to do that means that I have to walk with them to help heighten their awareness of where those relationships of love can be found. And sometimes, it is with our human family and our human kin. And many times it expands to the wider we of creation. And so to be able to do that is a great privilege and a gift. And I know I feel at home most with my family. And having just lost my significant other, devastating loss, I know that great joy of being home, of feeling home. And it feels to me like when I know people well enough that once I walk with them to a certain place, I can feel their own spirit at rest. And then I know this is where they want to be. This is where they feel at home. And then I kind of get to go home again too.
Oh, I love that, Laura. Something I admire about your work is how seamlessly you move between being poetic and practical. And you don't just help people make beautiful gardens or find awesome homes. You ask deep questions about the systems that they're a part of. So I'm curious if you could tell us more about the environmental arm of your work. And I know that this is where you're going to get really excited. What issues are you most passionate about addressing right now?
Yeah, we are in the midst of the sixth great extinction. This is a human-caused mass extinction of the biodiversity in our planet. Our home has been compromised in irrevocable ways. And now we are raising children in the context of, human children in the context of that planetary degradation. And for my own, I joke that I have no biological children. I have 7,000 adopted children from many years in higher ed. And it's for those kids, those human kids, definitely. But it's the wider reach of creation. So it's the air that we breathe that is compromised. It's the soil that is toxic. It's our water. Most of our planet is compromised. Salination, absolutely toxic water for our creature kin, for ourselves. And knowing that we have this gargantuan, what Thomas Berry would call the great work of the earth to do, right? It's when we're transitioning from anthropocentrism, human-centeredness, to ecocentrism, to earth-centeredness, and how all of that intertwines. When I get up every day, I usually pray with a little Mary Oliver poetry, maybe E. Cummings. I thank thee, God, for most this amazing day, to remind myself how embedded I am in creation. And then all of those facets of creation that enliven me, that give me joy, that wake me up, that wake the whole earth up every morning, and kind of lull us to sleep at night, that we're all held lovingly. And to cultivate that reverence is what I can contribute every day. You know, I work with ocean scientists. I work with energy executives. I work with people who are excellent at understanding soil content and sustainable agriculture. And all of those people need a spiritual grounding that elides skepticism and cynicism and goes into hope. And how do I communicate that in a way that that keeps the energy, kind of sparking between us, and that's what gets me up in the morning. That's why I love doing what I do, because I know that this will give people life and energy and hope, and that they can come back from whatever, devastating natural disaster or, human-caused disaster that they're facing right now. And that together we can embrace the wider we. That's what I do.
Laura, I've talked to you about this at length a couple of times, and this is your world. There's a section of my audience that's what I call curious unlearners. So they're just beginning to ask questions. And I'm sure right now a lot of them are thinking, what the hell is she talking about? Like, seriously, right? They're probably like, I don't know what's going on? What is she talking about? So I want you to kind of answer just like, because I can feel the urgency in your voice and I know exactly what you're saying. And so I really want you to get this across to everyone. Like, what are you saying, Laura?
So I think there's one word that if people were introduced to one word, it might help. The word is biophilia. And biophilia, it's coined by E.O. Wilson, a preeminent sociobiologist, just died a couple years ago, and Nobel Prize winning, outstanding sociobiologist, father of sociobiology, how humans and the biological world interface. But coined the phrase biophilia. And it comes from two Greek roots, bios, bio, right? B-I-O, B-I-O-S. In Greek means breathe. It means the world. It means the planet. It's it's the root for biology. It's basically life, right? Bios. And then there's philia, which is this affectionate love. We know, the city of brotherly love is Philadelphia, right? And so we're familiar with philia. So if you put those two together, love of life. Love of life. That's what this is about. It's about love of life. When people recognize that they're in love with life, they come alive, right? Now, almost all of your hearers will have an experience of falling in love at some point. And if they can remember those moments, I call it the first fervor, the first rush, when you feel in your being, the chemical reaction, right? That you're in love, that you are being seen and that you see with eyes that make this connection absolutely special and unique. Well, that's it. That's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about falling in love with life. Life in all of creation's forms, and it's varied and it's beautiful and it's mysterious, and sometimes it scares the hell out of us. But that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about love of life so that we preserve it, that we care for it, we protect it, and, hopefully restore what we've damaged.
Yeah. So that brings me to a question then. So what do you wish that more people understood about their role in the natural systems around them?
Well, I think it comes down to how connected everything is. It's easy to be kind of these disembodied brains walking around and feeling like we're very separated from creation. Like the creation is just a backdrop for the dramas of human existence, rather than really that we are embedded in creation and that we are one iteration of creation. We are one facet of what creation is. And that connection, that feeling connected, knowing that everything we touch, our breathing, our own breath, is in sync with the arbor elders, with the trees, right? As we expire, trees inspire. As trees expire, we inspire. We are in sync with the lungs of the planet, which is the trees that are breathing for us all. And to know that we're that connected and that embedded, that's family, that's kin. So we begin to see that our we is much wider than our little nuclear family or our community, our region, our bioregion, our nation. We are connected with the entire world. And by that, I mean the wider we of all creation. And that's what I hope people would embrace, is knowing how connected we are.
Yeah, I just said this in one of my last podcast episodes. Like, we have to shift from me to we. We have to make that shift as humanity.
Absolutely.
I guess, what is the role individuals play then in the environment? Like, how can we help to save what we've done?
Yeah.
Where do we go from here, Laura?
Yeah, sometimes it can feel overwhelming, right? If you look at it as, just little old me, what am I going to do? I can't affect world economies and so forth. Well, you know what? I like the Joanna Macy approach to, active hope. Active hope, the work that reconnects. That's Joanna's work, is active hope. And she's an eco-philosopher. If you haven't read any, your readers might be interested. But Joanna talks a lot about, choose one or two causes, things that you are passionate about, one or two, and plug into every network you can. That's it, guys. Plug in, connect. Because when we do that, this is how the trees are the oldest, living creatures in our biosphere, and they keep going, is mycelial networking. Suzanne Samard, the famous ethnobotanist, who talked about tree communication beneath the surface of the earth, talks about the fungal mycorrhizal networks that are always firing information and nutrients and hydration to protect the entire ecosystem. That's what we do. That's what we need to do. If we're one person, the first thing is to get rid of the idea that we're one person in isolation. And the second thing is to find one or two things we're passionate about and plug in. If we plug in, all of our networks are alive.
Yeah. I love that. I mean, I feel like I've recently done that, even where it was like I was getting really frustrated with conversations, like one-on-one conversations that I didn't feel like were going anywhere. And so I was just like, I think I'm going to start a podcast and just talk to the people that actually want to hear, right? Like, and start doing that plugging in that way. And also that hope that like people will come that are craving this conversation, right? So I love that advice, Laura. Plug in. And that's great. So I want to shift gears here, because one of the big themes in both of our lives lately has been change. So much change. Our families have changed. like the farm, even where you're living. The climate's changing, and change is not easy to navigate, especially when we're grieving the loss of something familiar, whether it is a home, or you mentioned like the derecho and the trees that we're grieving, or family members like spouses or uncles or whatever. So I'm just curious, Laura, like, how do you personally navigate change, whether it's on the land or in life?
Um, Environmental SOULutions was designed to help people navigate change by imitating nature. They're nature-based solutions. So when I'm going through something like a devastating loss, or, a vocational shift, relocation, I look to nature to help me learn. And I do this every single day, actually. I call it composting the soul. And what it does is it recognizes that we all, on a day-to-day basis, we can't just, I don't know if I love this, kind of kiss-off popular way of saying, oh, let it go. I know Frozen made that famous, right? Let it go, let it go. But you don't, right? I mean, experientially, every experience that we have, every sensory experience, every, visceral memory experience, every fragrance is imprinted in our memory and awareness. And we become not a loose amalgam, but an integration of all of these experiences. Our relationships don't end, right? We have energetic tethers that keep us in relationship. Even when a person dies, when a creature can die, we feel that tether, we feel that energetic presence. And so for me, the image is composting. Compost is the no waste system of the planet that takes everything and breaks it down and allows it to become new life, other, and still incorporate everything that we have been. So when I'm going through a profound change, first of all, I recognize that this is a breaking down, this is a decaying, and that it might smell. It's not pretty.
Right.
Right. But it's a necessary part of the process. I add good wigglers, red wigglers, right? So friends, acquaintances, reading material, fodder, stimulating conversation to help me keep churning everything, process everything. And then fresh air, a lot of new perspectives allow me to keep this composting process going. Now, I do that daily because I recognize that, staying where you are, as pleasant as it might feel, is not what life is. Life is dynamic. But basic quantum physics, quantum mechanics recognizes that when we observe is when a certain way of being comes into being. And so to constantly be observing is what is part of composting. It's changing constantly. It's so rapid to change that we have to be able to be a banana peel and be an avocado pit that's going to succumb to the movement of the red wigglers, to the soil and the organic matter and this wonderful oxygenation circulation process. And that's what I do, is I try to yield to composting, knowing that what's going to grow forth from that is going to be something astounding. It's going to be beautiful. It's going to be fragrant. It's going to be unbelievably nourishing. And other people are going to love that. And that's how it is for me. I try to lean into what I'm becoming rather than fall back into what I thought was great before.
I love that. Leaning to what you're becoming. And that's beautiful. Even the image of composting, right? Like not letting it go. You said not to say letting it go.
Oh, no, you can say
it. To let it decay. And that is the natural part of it. I think that's excellent. Like the shedding of the layers, or just, this isn't serving me anymore. I don't need this, or letting that aspect go or decay or become the banana peel. That's such a great visual, Laura, but also like, metaphor. That's brilliant. Thank you. What,
what lessons from the earth or the ecosystem have helped you ride the waves of transition?
Well, I already talked about the trees, right? Because the trees know how to do this. They've been doing it for millennia, and they have systems that they've developed over the centuries to weather change. The connecting piece is critical. And we talked about that before, but it's more critical, I think, as you get older. You know how they always say it's harder as you get older to make friends, right? Because it's kind of set in your ways. You don't quite know, it doesn't make sense to go do the venues that you did when you were younger.
Right.
Well, one of the things is that we atrophy in what we don't practice. And I think the reaching out piece is so critical, to do this bodily. I practice Tai Chi, I practice Qigong, because I want to be adept and malleable and be able to reach out with flexibility and with a sense of the energy that is all around and within me. And so I guess practicing and learning from the trees really helps me how to do this. My creature kin, definitely. I had huskies for years, Wolfie and Albie. Wolfie lived almost 17 and a half years. What I learned from that girl, it was more than I could ever have learned in a PhD program. And kids, human kids, I think are awesome. They teach me so much because they're sponges and they know how best to get their grow on. That they know how to do it.
What would you tell people that do not want to change? Or it's interesting. I'm just sitting here thinking about you and you're well, now I'm back home, but Iowa was kind of your stint away. I used to live in Chicago and then I came back to Iowa. So it's interesting, right? That home does bring us back, but I don't know if you feel this way in Missouri, but I feel like no one's left here. It's the same people doing the same thing. And I just get so frustrated and bored. God, there's a whole world out there, and they just want to stay in Johnson County, Iowa. And it's it's a great place to be for a while, but I guess there's people that are gonna be yeah, Mandy, and I don't plan on leaving and I never will. And it's well, that's great. And you do you, but what would you say to people that are maybe maybe there is more, or should I think about doing something else? Or how do you know when it's time to go somewhere else or to do something different?
Yeah, that sounds great. That's a great question, Mandy. I have had that experience, right? I've been away from my home most of my life. And so this is very odd going back and feeling just your experience, that, wow, nothing is, what happened here? People stopped thinking, they stopped growing, they stopped moving. I think one of the things is that we have a relationship with change, with the concept of change. Some people really think change is evil. They think change is something to be avoided at all costs. They have sort of reified the past or themselves in the past as the only time and the best time. When that catchphrase, make America great again. Make America great again, it might have been great for some people at some point. For a lot of people, it was not great. And they are hoping for change. They want change, right? And so, being able to embrace change is, I think, being alive and mature in our planet and in our universe. Because change is the nature of being. Change is the nature of the universe. We are products of a dynamic reality, not a static one. And when we get into life, when we have that biophilia, biophilia, when we get into and we love life, we recognize that we're in a dance. We're not kind of in an armchair as a couch potato. We're in a dance, and it's erotic, and it's very attractive and scary, right? And then when we do that dance, yeah, you know what I'm talking about, right? You get to a dance, people who are terrified, they are going to sit on the side. They are not going to get up. They're not going to get, it's a wedding. It's a wedding reception. Well, they're not going to get up and dance. They're going to be at that table, rooted there, because there's no freaking way they're going to get up and dance.
Right.
And I hope you dance. I hope you dance, because dance, change is the vehicle that is life. And that if we have a relationship with change that says, I'm not the river, I'm flowing with the river. I can try to put a stake down. I can throw my anchor in and stay here, or I can flow. And ultimately, we become part of the river. I think for many people, the ones who struggle the most in life are the ones who feel isolated and alone, and the ones who resist change. Those are the ones that when I walk with people in their spiritual journey, those are the ones that are very sad often, because they're not able to navigate anything that seems like it might call them into change. And it's hard for them.
Mm-hmm. Change is the only constant.
Yeah. So it's been said.
And that's a quote I've always hung on to. Change is the only constant. I don't know. It's all fascinating. Just mentalities and how we handle life, right? And just what life is. And is life this familiarity or this openness and this remembering, if you will? So I don't know, Laura, when we reconnected, I started looking at your Environmental SOULutions page and just saying, what are you up to now? I was really just poking around, trying to see, what is she doing? What's going on? How is it different than when I was talking to her when she was in Iowa? And you wrote a piece that I was like, ooh, I am liking this a lot. And I don't know if it's because I'm just on a real big children's literature kick, but I love Maurice Sendak and the Nutshell Library and Where the Wild Things Are. And so when I read your piece, Where the Wild Things Aren't, and I will post a link to this in the show notes, but it's part eco-reflection, part soul wake-up call is kind of how I interpreted this. I would love for you to share the heart of this piece here and just your whole take on Where the Wild Things Aren't. What inspired you to write that piece besides Maurice Sendak's book, obviously?
I do programming and retreats on rewilding spirituality. It's called rewilding. Okay. And the premise of it is that, as people have become significantly disconnected from nature, their spirituality has suffered. And so I do programs and retreats to help people kind of reconnect with their interior wild landscape, their interior soulscape, right? That's wild. When I introduce these, I often say the word wild. What does that word conjure for you? And people immediately, I can see the almost visceral, oh my gosh, they're uncivilized, terrifying, get me away from it. I don't want to be in the wild. I want to be civilized. I want to be domesticated. I want to be safe. Right. And so I loved pulling up Maurice Sendak. Obviously, that's been so instrumental for people for many, many decades. And I think over half a century. Has kind of captivated people's imagination. But the wild in all of us is very, very connected with this notion of souls that are untethered, souls that have a sense of the wildness in everything and in all of our kin. And, I think one of the things is about where we're most at home. We talked about this a little bit before, remember when the wild rumpus happens on the island with Max, the wild things don't want him to go. We love you. So we'll eat you up. We love you so. And when Max gets home, mother's still warm dinner is waiting for him. And it raises the question of, where are we truly home? Where do we feel home? And I think it's where we're loved. And it would be one thing if, we were sort of having to deal with this, right? Since we've all been civilized and domesticated and wrenched from our real home, which is Earth, which is creation. Whether we've been domesticated and we found love in this domesticated space. But what about all of the rest of creation? If Max had gone and decimated the island and killed all the wild creatures and left a toxic island and all the water was no longer potable, how would that have been from the perspective of the wild? There's something about our spirituality that helps us long for the wild rumpus and wanting to be part of the wild rumpus. And when we get pulled apart from that, we lose the sense of the rest of the wild that we rumpus with.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I was writing that, I mean, one of the things that I was appealing to are people's understanding that when we're kids, our imagination allows us to be right out there and with the wild all the time. And as we grow up, I used to say this to my students, we're very proper. We're very proper. We carry ourselves in a certain way. We keep our limbs very, very stationary, our necks and everything is very, stolid. And yet when we play, kids know how to do this. We twirl and we flail and we run about and roll around, and it's a
Yeah.
I think spiritually we need to do that too. We need to have that wild rumpus. And when we get disconnected from creation, we simply forget. And because we forget, we toxify the very womb that bore us and the very tomb that we're destined for.
Mm.
And I think that's it. It's where the wild things aren't is because of us, and we can help that right now. We can make it so that it's a celebration for Max to be at the island and for us to be at home in creation. I think we can celebrate that.
I love that. So what might it look like to bring the wild back? Like not just in rewilding the land, but in our own spirits.
Yeah. So E.O. Wilson, I'm going to refer to E.O. Wilson again, Edward O. Wilson. If your listeners have not heard of him, he's, I think, one of the greatest contributors to the quest of humanity to live peacefully in creation. E.O. Wilson talked about half-Earth theory, Gaia theory, and half-Earth theory. And that is preserving half of the entire biosphere for creation's sake. And it's not a pie in the sky kind of idyllic dreamings of a quack. This is science-based, absolutely grounded in research across many fields of biology to help rejuvenate the face of the earth. And that's how we do it. In our yards, for example, if we have a yard, even if we have a rooftop garden, whatever we have, allow half of it to be wild. Allow, if you can't do half, allow part of it to be itself. All nature wants to be is wild forest. If humans were backed off and we weren't a major player in this biosphere, the earth would rejuvenate and be a forest. Let it be. Let it be is what I say. When I help people with Soulscapes, for example, in their yards, I say, what part of this design are we going to leave you to be wild so that you can reconnect with your wild self and your wild soul? What part of this will help creatures understand that this is for them? It's not for us. It's like spreading the welcome mat for creation to evolve naturally, to simply grow and to be. Half Earth.
That's awesome. Half Earth. I like that a lot, Laura. I mean, you talking about wild and me bringing up the wild things, right? Like I've named this podcast Wildly Intentional. And I loved that because I always was like, yeah, I have feral kids, like, and I love that. And then I realized like, no, they're not feral, like they're wild. And that is intentional. Like, and to me, it's just letting them be kids and giving them like a true childhood and just running around, getting dirty, like exploring, being curious, like using your imagination, like, and I think that that's where that wildly, and I think too, just how a lot of people see a lot of these conversations and how we go against the grain on things is very wild. Like, what are you thinking? And it's like, I'm actually thinking very deeply about many of these things, right? Like, these are not flippant decisions that I have made. Like, I understand that they are not very well received by a lot of people and easy to get flack for. But like what I say to some people in 2 minutes doesn't mean that it's been hours, days, or months of considerations on Common End, right? So yeah, I love the wild and I'm seeing it more and more. Like, I think it's really resonating with people right now. There's another woman that just launched something very similar with the word wild in it. And I think people are excited about waking up this wild versions of themselves. And honestly, as someone that has a podcast about this, it's like, yes, get excited. Like, the scripts aren't serving you and this is outdated and you were meant to be more than a zombie doing a 9-to-5 you don't like and serving systems and not being in a house that you own or with a family that you have, like you are meant to, if that's our definition of wild, Laura, what? I just said, you know what I mean? But it's like, okay, if that's the definition of wild, man, am I here for it. But I really, like when I sit and I think about that, I'm like, that is so not wild. Like what we're doing as a society is actually way more wild that's been normalized. I don't know. It's a slight tangent, but the word wild got me really excited. So
No, I'm glad you're talking about it and think about it, Mandy. I think it's really important. I think that a lot of this has to do with control.
Yes.
Being out. People. Oftentimes, I work with people and I talk about rewilding spirituality. They say, "I don't like to be out of control," and then I talk about that with them. What is that really about? Being out of control. And ways of, abnegating responsibility or feeling connected with wild nature. And what is it really about? And kind of deconstructing these hierarchical systems of being that we have reified in our imagination, right? And for many people, spiritually, there's a pyramid. God at the top or other or transcendence or mystery or however, we understand otherness. And then it's kind of goes down from there and it gets spread out and there's a lot of subjugation. And when you're out of control in this paradigm, you have to yield. You have to yield a lot. And people are not ready to yield. And I think that's part of the, reticence about wildish ways of being and wildish spiritualities. I think it's scary to people. It's like Max going to that island, right?
I think too, it's what we were talking about before, which is like the world is just heavy. There's just a lot going on. And so, yeah, when everything feels out of control or it's like, what can I reach for and grab and control myself? And so I don't fault people for that, but you have to have a trust and you also have to get mad enough to stand up and not just let things be grabbed, So
absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's definitely an underlying theme right now for sure. Well, Laura, I have two final questions for you. I always ask people, and you've thrown out a lot of authors and a lot of people. So if you need to email me a list later, I can always link to the books in the show notes. But what are books or readings? Like if people are just like, I really want to understand more about what she's talking about. What are some pieces of work that have really shaped your thoughts or your career trajectory on everything we've talked about here today?
Oh my goodness. But I think, I would say to make it accessible, some of what I'm talking about, read Robin Wall Kimmerer. A lot of people have read Braiding Sweetgrass. her latest book on the serviceberry, I think, is awesome, and it's very accessible. You can get it in a book on tape and do it in an hour or two, maybe. I think I like the more in-depth, philosophical thinkers. Charles Eisenstein, for example, David Abram. I really like McFarlane, Robert McFarlane, who did Underland, and Powell, who did Overstory. And McFarlane is now, written one about water, and is A River Alive, I think is the name of it. These are people, Joanna Macy, I mentioned, eco-philosopher who does active hope, the work that reconnects. Even if you don't like esoteric kinds of thinking, or, it's just like, that's blah, 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 too many words. Take up a little poetry. Mary Oliver, Wendell Berry. These are people who will light up your soul with.
I love Wendell Berry.
Yeah. And make it feel, again, make you feel in love with creation again. If you forgot, these are people that I would recommend. And also, I always say this, and a lot of people have not heard of him, but he really started out this whole understanding of spirituality as being tied with evolutionary understanding. And it was a Jesuit paleontologist by the name of Pierre Teilhard de Chardin, and it's Chardin. If people want to look it up who are listening, I highly recommend reading his Mass on the World. It really has a spirituality of creation that's unrivaled. Thomas Berry, picked it up later in the 60s and 70s when he's a Passionist priest who was appealing to women's religious communities that had land holdings, and said, hey, turn them into eco-spirituality centers. Because people need to connect with nature, and when they do, they'll guard it. Thomas Berry is another one. He talked about the great work. So those are some of the people that I think I would recommend. And of course, I have tons of others, but that's a good start.
Thank you, Laura. Final question for you. If someone is feeling stuck or really just disconnected from their environment, the world, creation, as you're saying, or from themselves even, what would you say would be a really simple first step that they could take?
Oh, that's easy. Okay. Practice Shinrin-yoku.
What is that?
Shinrin-yoku is forest bathing. It's nature therapy. It's a progressive sensory awareness experience. I'm a trained nature and forest therapy guide, so I could lead people in this. But I also have blog posts on it, and there are a lot of resources out there that you can do. You can find someone near you, or just reach out to me, and I'm happy to walk with you through it. But I take this with every retreat and every person that I work with, if I can, is forest bathing. It's nature immersion therapy, and I do it every day. And
are you talking about streaking through the woods?
No. So
what are you talking about, Laura?
No nakedness in the woods involved. Forest bathing is a way of heightening your senses. So isolating each sense. So hearing, touching, smelling, tasting, seeing, isolating each sense until we integrate and converge them all. And when we do this experience, it's a profound experience of being received and reconnected with nature. And I recommend this to everybody. I practice Tai Chi and Qigong with people, but I say if you can do Shinrin-yoku every day, you're going to immediately feel connected again.
So am I just going in there for 5 minutes, trying to find a snack and getting out, or taking a trail walk? How long do you do this for? What does this look like?
Yeah, how long depends on you. I generally do it a half an hour, but recommend about an hour.
Okay. So trying to just find it like a trail and just really, I feel like when you go into the forest, a lot of times I feel like it takes me just a couple of minutes on a walk to even just get the phone, get the
Right.
phone away and start to decompress, and then after that, you start to see the light differently through the trees and hear the birds and, oh, what's this leaf? And that's when like I'll tell the kids things like, look for heart-shaped objects today, or look for things that are this color, or things that you could do with this, and just like making stuff up on the walk, to just kind of create these little invitations to get curious about it. So
That's awesome. Yeah, that's awesome. And that's, I think people, we talk a lot about the health benefits, right? Heart rate and blood pressure and, neurophysiological benefits from this, breath work, all of that is in this focus, balance, all of this. I also think that there's this sixth sense that I talk to clients about when I do forest bathing with them. And the sixth sense is when we integrate all of those, and then creation becomes a symphony around us and within us. And it's that moment of integration when, oh my goodness, you can't leave feeling lonely. You leave feeling alive and really energized by creation and in the heart of creation. So I would recommend that for sure.
yeah, I had a really fun experience with that. I went on a hike with a group of women that I was doing this thing with, and we got to the river bluff and we like just kind of were quiet and did a little meditation together. And then at the end, the woman that like had us there was talking about how her spirit animal is like an eagle. And she just was like, I'm going to call like an eagle. And she did. And then all of a sudden on the other side of the river, an eagle called back and then like swooped in towards us. And then its like baby started flying around. And then she called to it like 3 more times. And we were all just standing there with total goosebumps, like, wow, like how crazy was that? Like, it was just so fun. And like, yeah, but I think you have moments like that in the forest when it's like, it's not going to make a ton of sense to everybody else. But in that moment, it felt so alive and so like, that was just for us. Like that was amazing. And you don't get those when you're just trying to, okay, I heard this weird thing about forest bathing. I'm going to go try it 5 minutes. Okay, that was weird. Not for me. And it's like, you didn't give it a chance. Just get in there and remove some of the noise and just try, like really go in with an open heart and an open mind and no agenda. And like you said, like half an hour to an hour, the worst thing that's going to happen is you're going to get like 1,000 steps in, right? Like,
yes, right. Got purposeless walks but I think there's, that what you're saying, Mandy, here is really important. And I would hate to leave the podcast without saying something about it. We're in a period right now of post-humanism. And in our post-human era, everything has sped up. Everything is at such accelerated rates because we're keeping up with, obviously, right, the technological advancement, which is increasing in speed as we go, right? And for our brains cannot process that fast, and we break down. We break down with the stress of trying to microprocess everything that we do. We are indelibly connected to smart technology now. We will never not be cyborg humans, cybernetic organisms. We will never not be embedded with technology. Human evolution is going to, and so everything has sped up. So when you say, slow down, don't make your eyes move fast, take a breath. This is going to take time. Organic processes take time. You could feel people, oh, what? I can't waste time. I don't have that much. Oh, I can't do that. I don't have time. Well, this is the nature of compost, is that it takes time. Spiritual awareness and it takes time.
You can't shortcut the lessons that you're here to learn.
No.
Yeah. You talking about the cell phones in your pockets. It's like one of the biggest, I think we've all been sold a lot of lies, right? But one of the biggest lies I think we were ever sold in school was that we won't have a calculator in our pockets. We don't go anywhere without it, right? Like the phone is actually like the last function that anybody actually resorts to on the phone, which is actually speaking to a human, like actually with your voice speaking to a human, right? Like that's frustrating in its own right that so many people just send you to voicemail and text. And it's like, we've really just even lost the ability to have conversations with each other.
Yeah.
Always leave them wanting more, right, Laura?
There you go. There you go.
Well, I cannot thank you enough, Laura. Like, I love conversations with you because I always go from just like, I wonder what we'll talk about today to like, okay, I really want to get outside and go do all these things now. And you give such energy and life, and you just are such a positive force and have so much passion just exuding through you. And I'm just so grateful that I took a chance on this random Soulscape just because out of curiosity, right? And it's developed into this. So Laura, thank you so much for being here with me today, sharing your wisdom and your knowledge, and just for everything that you're doing.
Oh my gosh, Mandy, it's been my pleasure. And also, just to know that, gosh, imagine all the people who might listen to this and say, okay, now how do we connect? And that's what we need right now is that connection. So thank you so much for inviting me and just being a friend listening.
Absolutely.
Wow. What a gift to walk with Laura through the wild terrain of change, vocation, and the soulful connection between land and life. If her words stirred something in you, an ache, a remembering, a spark, I invite you to follow that thread. Visit Environmental SOULutions.com to learn more about Laura's work and check out her powerful piece, Where the Wild Things Aren't. Both are linked in the show notes. Thank you for being here, Wild One. Thank you for tuning into another episode, for thinking deeply, questioning boldly, and choosing to live with more intention. Because that choice you're making ripples. If this episode lit a spark of remembrance in you, pass it on. Share it with a kindred spirit who's also craving deeper roots in ancient rhythms. Let's bring the lost wisdom back together. Into the Known is about moving through mystery with presence, and I often record it in the quiet hours. If it brings grounding or insight, you can fuel the process by supporting the show at buymeacoffee.com/wildlyintentional. As we continue to ask what it means to live into the known, may we listen to the land beneath our feet, the call within our bones, and the soul of the world that's always been waiting for us to come home. Until next time, my friend, stay rooted, be brave, and live wildly intentional.